Take a moment with me. Just pause, and reflect. Have you ever felt like you were slowing down in life? Not because of peace, but because the people around you were quietly draining your energy over the years. I've seen this happen to so many people, men and women at the age of 40, 50, or even 60 years old. They come to me, not with loud complaints, but with quiet exhaustion. They say things like, "I don't know why, but every time I talk to that person, I walk away feeling heavier, like something's pulling me down." And more often than not, the answer lies not in them, but in the people they're surrounded by. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." But how do we hold on to that strength when we allow negativity to sneak into our minds each day? As someone who has lived and studied Stoic philosophy for years here in the US, I've come to believe one truth. The people you let into your life don't just shape your time, they shape your spiritual atmosphere. They can either elevate you, or suffocate the quiet strength growing inside you. That's why, in this video, I want to walk with you through 14 types of people that are Stoic, or anyone seeking a deeper, more meaningful life, should learn to keep at a healthy distance. Not to judge them, but to protect your peace. Let's begin with the first, the envious one. The person who cannot truly celebrate your success. The one who subtly minimizes your achievements, not with harsh words, but with dismissive glances or hollow praise. Have you ever shared a hard-earned accomplishment, maybe a project you poured months into, or even a small but meaningful win, only to be met with, "Oh, nice. But isn't that what everyone's doing now?" That moment, what did it feel like? A little hollow, a little cold. Instead of joy, you felt yourself shrink. And slowly, over time, you stopped sharing. Not because you had less to be proud of, but because you felt less seen. That's not just envy. It's the quiet erosion of confidence, where their insecurity becomes your inner doubt. Am I bragging? Was that really a big deal? Should I just stay quiet next time? But remember what Marcus Aurelius said. Your happiness depends on the quality of your thoughts. And your thoughts are shaped by your environment, especially the people closest to you. An envious person doesn't just withhold support. They inject uncertainty into your mind, through words, looks, or even silence. Not openly hostile, but deeply unsettling. Imagine someone fighting through hardship, growing, transforming, only to receive a cold nod from someone they thought would be proud. Eventually, they go quiet. Not because they lack joy, but because they've lost the feeling of being valued. Have you ever been there? Because I have. And the truth is, none of us are immune to the sting of being quietly dismissed. But we can learn to recognize it early. Not everyone will be happy for you, and that's okay. Envy is born from personal insecurity. But that doesn't mean it's your job to shrink yourself to make them comfortable. You don't need permission to succeed. You don't need approval to feel joy. You don't owe anyone your silence, just because your light makes them uncomfortable. Your job is to stay rooted in the truth. Your success is real. Your effort matters. Your journey has meaning, whether others see it or not. Stoicism teaches us, focus on what you can control. Your thoughts, your choices, your reactions. You can't control how others feel, but you can decide whether you let their feelings live rent-free in your mind. So, what do you do when you encounter envy? Stay calm. Stay kind. Stay clear. No need to argue. No need to prove. Just ask yourself, does this person align with the life I'm trying to build? If the answer is no, create distance. Not with anger, but with wisdom. Not to punish them, but to protect your peace. It may not be easy, but you're not alone. So many have walked this path, and when they chose to honor their inner worth, they no longer needed validation from outside eyes. A small circle of genuine people, who celebrate you, not compete with you, will always be more valuable than a crowd watching, waiting for you to fall. Stand firm. Stay clear. And if you've ever been hurt by envy, let this remind you, the path you're on matters, and you're worthy of walking it with pride. 2. The emotional manipulator. Those who use feelings to control you, making you feel guilty or unsure whenever you follow your own path. Have you ever walked away from a conversation feeling heavy, burdened, asking yourself, why do I feel guilty? Just for saying what I truly think? Picture this: you open up. You share an idea or a feeling that genuinely matters to you, only to be met with a glance that says, "Are you sure about that?" The words may be soft, but there's a chill behind them. Subtle criticism, indirect disapproval, and suddenly, you feel small. That's the presence of an emotional manipulator. They don't yell. They don't threaten. Instead, they plant emotions in you: guilt, doubt, insecurity, until your confidence starts to unravel. They're skilled at making you question yourself, even when you've made your choices with clarity and care. Over the years, I've met many people in their 40s, 50s, and 60s, standing at life's midpoint, longing to start fresh, to live with more purpose. They've told me things like, "I don't know why, but every time I talk to that person, my heart feels smaller." As we explore further, a pattern emerges. Someone close to them constantly asks, "Do you even know what you're doing? Or what will people think if you go through with that?" These aren't questions meant to help. They're designed to plant doubt, to shake your foundation from within. But Stoicism teaches us this: emotions are internal reactions, not objective truths. Epictetus reminds us, it's not what happens to you that harms you, it's how you respond. If we let someone else's fears or insecurities seep into our mind unchecked, we allow their darkness to cloud our own light. I remember a woman in her early 50s. After retirement, she finally decided to write a book based on her life experience. Every time she shared this dream with an old friend, the reply was always, "Anyone can write. Staying motivated is the hard part." Not once did the friend say, "You're not good enough." But over time, the writer lost her joy. Doubt crept in, not because she lacked talent, but because she absorbed someone else's uncertainty. That's the power of emotional manipulation. It whispers, rather than shouts. It makes you second-guess your worth, not by attacking, but by planting hesitation. You may wonder, but what if that person is family? And you're right. This isn't about cutting people off. It's about holding your ground. Manipulators don't use weapons. They use emotions. So your defense can't be aggression, it must be clarity. Through years of studying Stoicism and guiding others, I've learned one thing: when you deal with emotional manipulation, you must create an inner space, a calm, quiet gap where their words cannot reach your core. This space isn't coldness, it's presence. It's choosing to respond with your own grounded logic rather than their projected fear. If someone asks, "Do you really think you're doing well?" you don't need to defend. You can simply say, "I've done my best. I trust the results will speak through the experience and feedback of those I respect." That kind of reply is calm, sincere, and firm. You don't reject them, but you don't let them steer your emotions either. And if you walk away from a conversation feeling anxious, take a moment, listen to calming music, read a Stoic quote like, "What others think does not reach the reasoning part of you." Make a habit of asking, "Is this discomfort mine? Or did I inherit it from someone else? The moment you can answer that, you've already regained control. I often tell my clients, you don't need to win over others. You only need to be stronger than who you were yesterday. And when you reach that strength, something beautiful happens. When someone tries to guilt you, you'll simply look at them, smile gently, and stay still within. They'll realize they no longer have the power they once had, and eventually, they stop. Ask yourself gently, does this person truly care about me? Or are they more concerned with how they feel when I grow? That question can help you see clearly who is helping your spirit grow, and who is quietly draining your energy. And always remember, Stoicism is not about being rigid. It's about anchoring your values in the sanctuary of your inner life. The manipulator wants you to revolve around their insecurity, but you don't have to spin in that orbit anymore. Be still. Be clear. Let their doubt find no place to land inside you. If you've ever experienced this, feel free to share your story in the comments. We are a community learning to master our emotions, not just to survive, but to live peacefully, purposefully, and powerfully. Thank you for being here, and I'll see you in the next reflection, where together, we walk through the shadows, and return to the light within. The fake friend, those who wear a smile in front of you but plant seeds of doubt behind your back, leaving you guarded, uncertain, and unable to fully trust. Have you ever known someone who seemed kind, polite, even admiring, when others were around, but the moment your back was turned, something shifted? Vague rumors, subtle glances, quiet whispers that chilled you to your core? That's what I call the inauthentic companion, the one who pretends to support you, yet silently sabotages you. I want you to imagine this: you're standing on a boat, drifting peacefully on calm waters, but someone behind you is quietly drilling a hole in the hull. Outwardly, they smile, they paddle alongside you, but in truth, they don't want you to go far. They're just waiting for a moment of vulnerability. And then, the boat begins to sink. These are not people who hurt you openly. They damage from the shadows. They pretend to walk beside you, while slowly pulling away the foundation beneath your feet. And what makes them so difficult to confront is this: you often can't point to anything specific. Their behavior lives in the gray area, not obvious enough to call them a bad person, but just subtle enough to erode your trust in humanity. Marcus Aurelius once said, "Do what is right. Let others think what they will. It is enough that you know." But when you're surrounded by people who wear masks, even the right thing becomes hard to see. You start to question not just others, but yourself. I remember a man in his 60s, once a senior executive at a media company in California. He shared with me a story about a close colleague who always called him my mentor, my guiding light. They had lunch together, shared family stories, spoke of dreams and retirement plans. But one day, he discovered this same person had secretly submitted a damaging report about him to management, trying to take his promotion. He said to me, "I wasn't even angry. I just felt like the ground disappeared. As if I'd been walking all this time beside a reflection in the mirror, not a real person." That is the wound of a fake friend. It's not just betrayal. It's the deep confusion of realizing you placed your trust in the wrong hands. Stoic philosophy reminds us, don't place too much weight on others' opinions. But it also doesn't ask us to ignore dishonesty. Epictetus once said, "Choose your company as you would choose a teacher." In other words, don't choose people who make you feel like you must perform to keep their approval. Fake people are often skilled. They make everything seem fine, but your intuition never lies. Even when there's no proof, your spirit senses the dissonance. So let me ask you this: are you holding on to someone, not because they bring peace, but because you're afraid of upsetting them? Is there someone who makes you edit your words? Question your tone. Measure your emotions? If so, you may be living next to a mask, not a person. So what should you do? Stoicism teaches calm, not submission. You don't need to confront. You need distance. Not to punish them, but to protect yourself from wounds you cannot see. Choose authenticity, not just with others, but with yourself. Speak the truth you feel, even if only to yourself. When suspicion arises, trust your instincts. Don't rush to accuse, but do step back. Watch who stays when you stop playing the role of the agreeable one. And most of all, don't let someone else's falsehood turn you into a version of yourself that isn't real. So many lose their trust, then begin to perform, to protect, to hide. That's how inauthenticity spreads, not through actions, but through the pain it leaves behind. But I believe this: those who live sincerely will find one another. Yes, you may lose a few old companions, but in their place, you will find peace. And from that peace, you'll build a life where no masks are needed, only your honest self, rooted in values that matter. 4. The blamer, someone who always finds fault in circumstances or others, but never takes responsibility for their own failures. Let me ask you to recall a moment, a time when you faced failure, or something in life didn't go your way, and someone nearby told you, that wasn't your fault. It was your boss. It was the system, the market, other people. It feels comforting at first, doesn't it? Like someone is standing up for you, defending you. But after the warmth fades, something inside you is left behind, a quiet void. I want you to examine that feeling. What is it? Really? It's a sense of powerlessness, like life is a chessboard where you're just another piece, moved by forces you can't control. No matter how hard you try, it's never really in your hands. That is the silent damage of being too close to someone who always blames. The blamer doesn't shout, "I'm right. You're wrong." They whisper. They sow thoughts like, "There was no real chance to succeed anyway. Anyone would have failed in that situation. They got lucky." Not better, just luckier. And over time, you begin to believe that what happens in your life isn't up to you, whether they realize it or not. Such people are robbing you of one of your greatest assets, responsibility for your own life. One of the core teachings of Stoic philosophy is this: we cannot control what happens to us, but we can always control how we respond. Epictetus. Yes, failure can arise from many sources, but how you rise, how you reflect, how you grow from it, that's your decision, no one else's. I once worked with a man in his early 50s who had gone bankrupt after more than 15 years running a small business. He told me, "I lost everything because my partner betrayed me." He shared stories of dishonesty, injustice, and lack of support, and truthfully, every story had merit. But then I asked him, if you could go back, what would you do differently? He went silent for a long while. Then he finally said, "Honestly, I was blind. I trusted too much and never managed the risks." That was the turning point. The moment he took responsibility, he reclaimed his power. And the next time he started again, he didn't need to blame anymore. He planned more wisely. He led more consciously. He took ownership of every small choice. You see, blaming others might comfort you in the moment, but it never moves you forward. I'm not denying that the world can be unfair. Yes, life throws things at us we don't ask for and don't deserve. But Stoicism never tells us to deny reality. It tells us to begin where we do have power, and build from there. The one who blames lives in the land of excuses. They constantly return to the past, looking for reasons why something didn't work. But here's the strange thing, they rarely look for solutions, because in their mind, The solution was never theirs to create, and if you spend too long near someone like that, you'll start postponing your own actions. You'll hear yourself saying things like, "It's too late to start over now. I don't have the skills they have. If only I had the same opportunities as them." Have you ever caught yourself saying those things? I have. Years ago, I missed a major opportunity in my career, and I told myself, it was my manager's fault. They never supported me. But the more I said it, the less I tried again. Only when I finally admitted I wasn't ready, I was afraid of risk, did I begin to move forward. Stoics don't avoid blame because they're proud. They avoid it because they understand this truth. To blame is to give away your inner power. So if there's someone in your life, a friend, a colleague, a loved one, who always looks outside for the source of their problems, be aware not to judge them, but to protect your own framework of thinking. You can listen. You can empathize, but don't adopt their lens as your own worldview. Instead, learn to ask yourself a simple question whenever something goes wrong. What is one thing, no matter how small, that I can do to make this better? That question will keep you standing, while others are still waiting for someone else to fix things. And here's what I want to leave you with. Living with responsibility doesn't mean carrying shame or burden. It simply means this: you are the one steering the boat of your life. The wind may blow against you, the waves may rise, but the oars are in your hands. And if someone near you is stuck in the habit of blaming, gently remind them, maybe the circumstances were unfair, but what we choose next, that's entirely up to us. And if you've been affected by this mindset yourself, I want you to forgive yourself first, because sometimes blaming is a way to numb the sting of failure. But eventually, we must awaken again, and reclaim responsibility. Not because we have to, but because it's the only path to true freedom. 5. The extreme pessimist, the one who only sees risks, discourages action, and quietly extinguishes your sense of hope. Have you ever felt truly excited about something, a new idea, a personal project, a life shift, and the moment you shared it, someone cut in with, "That's dangerous. Chances are it'll fail." At our age, is it really worth the risk? At first, those words sound like concern, like someone trying to protect you. But if you listen closely, something inside you starts to shrink. It's like a cold wind brushing across a small fire. Not strong enough to put it out, but enough to make you hesitate, enough to make you wonder, am I being unrealistic? The extreme pessimist rarely yells. They don't shout that you'll fail. They speak calmly, rationally, pointing out every possible risk, every flaw, every obstacle, with furrowed brows and quiet tones, as if they're shielding you from a looming disaster. But in truth, they're not offering caution. They're planting fear. And fear, left unchecked, slows you down. It clouds your thinking, and eventually, it stops you from trying altogether. In my years of working with people in midlife and beyond, I've seen this pattern often. These individuals aren't lacking in talent or passion. What they often lack is a safe enough space to let their dreams grow. And tragically, that space is sometimes denied by the people closest to them, people whose worldview has become so steeped in pessimism that every door looks like a dead end. I still remember a woman in her 60s who once told me she wanted to open a small baking class after retirement. She had spent her life cooking for her family, passing down traditional recipes, bringing warmth to every celebration. She dreamed of teaching younger people how to make these dishes. But when she shared her idea, a close friend simply said, "No one cares about that stuff anymore. You'll open the class and just sit there waiting for students who never come." She didn't argue. She just smiled. But the next day, The recipe book she had spent months preparing was quietly placed in a drawer. That story never left me because it had no drama. No explosion of emotion, just a quiet death of a meaningful dream, at the hands of a gentle voice claiming to care. Stoicism doesn't ask us to ignore risk. Philosophers like Epictetus, Seneca, and Marcus Aurelius acknowledged uncertainty and suffering, but they also taught us, we must never let fear of what we cannot control dictate the course of our lives. We are to face challenges head-on, accept reality, and move forward, with reason, courage, and resilience. Marcus once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." But you can't access that strength if you're constantly surrounded by voices whispering, "It's too risky. It won't work. It's impossible." The extreme pessimist doesn't just delay your action, they make you doubt yourself. And if you let that doubt grow, it seeps into your mind like salt into soil, slowly poisoning the ground where your next dream might have grown. One man told me, "It took me 10 years to realize that I wasn't wrong for wanting to change careers. I was just wrong to listen to people who never dared to change theirs." That hit me like a blade of truth, because often, the real reason we delay is not that we aren't ready, but that we let others define safety for us. Now, I'm not saying you should ignore all advice. Some warnings are based in wisdom and experience. But Stoicism teaches discernment. Learn to tell the difference between feedback rooted in real insight, and fear disguised as care. Choose your companions like you choose medicine. Keep those who make your mind clearer and your actions more focused. Step back from those who exhaust your energy and fill you with hesitation. And the next time someone tells you, "At your age, no one does that," respond with, "Then maybe it's time someone did." Because in the end, what we truly need in life isn't perfect safety, it's the energy to believe, to learn, and to live boldly. And if you've ever been the pessimist, if you've ever discouraged someone you loved because you were afraid for them, don't be hard on yourself. We all do it. We all fear for those we care about. But now you know, sometimes, what people need most is not protection, but belief. Believe that they can rise. Believe that failure isn't fatal. Believe that every step forward, however small, matters. I hope this video helps you pause for a moment and reflect. Think back to a time you were held back by someone's cautious words. And next time that voice whispers fear, ask yourself, but what if it works? Because that question is where all meaningful journeys begin. 6. The overly dependent, someone who cannot stand on their own, constantly needs your help, and slowly drains your time and energy. There are people in our lives who don't do anything wrong, at least not on the surface. They don't create conflict. They don't raise their voice. They don't betray you. They just lean on you, quietly, constantly, as if without your support, they simply couldn't keep going. At first, that sounds touching. It feels like trust, like someone relying on you because they believe in you. But over time, you start to feel something shift. You feel tired. You feel drained. You feel like you have to be there, not because you want to, but because you're expected to. The overly dependent person is not always weak. In fact, they're often skilled at making you feel guilty for setting boundaries. They know how to share stories of injustice, abandonment, and hardship, and you, with your natural kindness, reach out to help. Once, then twice, and then, by the 10th time, something inside you starts to whisper, "This isn't right." I once met a man in his mid-50s who had spent nearly a decade caring for a close friend. The friend lost his job, spiraled into depression, and slowly stopped taking care of himself. At first, the man felt it was his moral duty to help, but as the years went on, his own health declined. his career stalled, and his family relationships fractured, he realized, this wasn't support anymore. It was one-sided dependency. His friend no longer tried to stand, because someone else was always carrying him. From a Stoic perspective, helping others is noble, but helping someone to the point that they never learn to stand on their own is not compassion, it's disempowerment. Seneca once wrote, "We should not carry others endlessly. We must point the way, so they may walk it on their own." Here's the hard truth: if you don't draw clear boundaries, overly dependent people will consume your time, energy, and spirit, not out of malice, but because they've never been taught to take responsibility. And eventually, you become like a life raft, always afloat, always available. But even a life raft, without rest, will deflate. The overly dependent person keeps you in constant reaction mode. They call when something goes wrong. They talk for hours, just to be heard. They ask for advice, then ignore it, only to return and ask again. You find yourself stuck in a loop, giving endlessly with no end in sight. Have you ever been in that situation? One friend once told me how she helped her younger cousin get a job, taught her basic skills, even wrote the resume for her. But every few months, the cousin would quit, complain, blame the workplace, then return to square one. And every email, every call, was the same: "Can you help me again?" At first, she felt needed. But after 5 years, she realized, the only thing growing was the cousin's dependency. Now, I'm not saying we shouldn't support those we love, but support doesn't mean carrying someone on your back for their entire journey. Every person must take their own steps, even if the first steps are slow, shaky, or uncertain. With someone overly dependent, the best gift you can give is not rescue. It's teaching them how to swim. That is real compassion. Stoicism doesn't teach us to be cold, but it also doesn't ask us to become martyrs of our own kindness. We help within reason, without losing the ability to care for ourselves. If there's someone in your life who makes you feel like you always have to show up, always have to save, always have to sacrifice, then maybe you're not helping them. You're helping them delay their own growth. Ask yourself, if I stepped away from their life tomorrow, would they be able to stand? The answer will tell you everything you need to know. I once asked a woman this very question about her younger sibling. She paused, then said, they'd probably struggle, but maybe they'd finally learn. And she cried, not out of anger, but because, for the first time, she realized, love, when misapplied, can become a form of harm. I know that for many people, especially as we grow older, helping family, especially children or grandchildren, feels natural. But remember, the goal is not to do everything for them. The goal is to teach them how to stand. And that can only happen when you have the courage to let them wrestle with life on their own. No one learns to swim by reading instructions from the shore. They have to step into the water. They have to flail. They have to learn how to kick. 7. The chronic complainer, someone who is never satisfied, constantly grumbling without seeking real solutions. Have you ever walked away from a conversation feeling inexplicably heavy? Not because the topic was dark, but because the person you spoke with seemed to drain your spirit by constantly complaining. They weren't just sharing concerns. They were broadcasting a deep, relentless dissatisfaction, without offering a single way forward. This job is exhausting. There's never enough time. People always let me down. At first, these sound like ordinary frustrations. But soon, you realize it's not just venting. It's a symphony of despair that slowly pulls you into its rhythm. And you may begin to wonder, why is there never a next step? Why does this conversation always feel like a loop with no exit? At first, it seems harmless. But over time, it begins to choke your own optimism. In my work with people over the age of 35, I've seen this happen often. They come to me and say, "I don't know why, but I always feel drained after talking to that person." And more often than not, it's because they've been pulled into a cycle of complaints with no resolution. As a Stoic practitioner, I never advise avoiding heartfelt conversations. Connection matters. Listening matters. But sharing without responsibility is a red flag. Seneca once said, "To complain without action is to trap yourself in the labyrinth of your own mind." Think about that, a maze with no exit. It can feel strangely comforting, but it leads nowhere. And the longer you stay inside it, the more you lose the will to seek the light. Let me share a story. A friend in her 50s once retired from a high-level corporate job to help raise her grandson. At first, her stories were small frustrations. Her daughter-in-law didn't know how to care for the baby. The neighbors were careless. The weather was miserable. But as time passed, it became clear, nothing was ever good enough. Every day, a new list of complaints, but never a shift in tone. Eventually, even she began doubting her own abilities, her patience running thin. And no one finds joy standing beside someone whose life feels like a sad, never-ending movie. You might say, "But isn't it normal to feel tired or upset sometimes?" Yes. The difference is in how someone engages with their pain. Someone truly seeking clarity might say, "Yesterday was tough, but today, I'll try." Their story becomes a doorway to action. The chronic complainer, however, stays stuck in, "It's always like this," and that story has no ending, because it never begins to change. Another example, a man in his 60s who worked for a non-profit. Every morning he'd say, "The funding is low. Volunteers are ineffective. Our partners never deliver." It went on for months, until one day, he admitted, "I'm not even looking for solutions anymore. I'm hiding inside my own complaints." That moment, when he turned towards Stoicism, was the beginning of his freedom. He learned to ask not "Why is this happening?" but "What can I do next?" So, what does Stoic philosophy offer us when we're faced with someone who complains without moving forward? First, learn to recognize it. You don't need to react or fix. Just observe. Ask yourself, is this a genuine concern, or just passing emotion? When you listen as a witness, not a rescuer, you begin to see more clearly. Second, if you want to help, don't just nod. Ask open questions. Gently, what would you like to change? What's one small step you could take? If they can't answer, that tells you something. They may not want solutions, they may want sympathy without responsibility. And if you're a natural problem solver, this dynamic can quietly burn you out. Third, protect your inner space. You don't owe anyone your energy, especially if they're not building anything. That's not selfish, it's self-preservation. Stoicism teaches compassion, but not enmeshment. You can care deeply and still stay centered. Stand beside them, but don't sink with them. And if you choose to keep the connection, become a source of light. Share a story where you faced a struggle, and the small action you took to rise from it. Instead of matching their despair, model direction. You might wonder, if I step back, will I lose this relationship? Maybe. But also ask, if I keep absorbing their complaints, will I lose myself? Sometimes, letting go of a stagnant relationship creates freedom for both sides. In coaching sessions, I often tell clients over 40 to set a mental threshold. If a conversation drains you 3 times in a row, it's time to pause. You have every right to say, "I'm carrying a lot today. I need to take a break." Not to punish them, but to protect your own clarity. And remember, you are on a Stoic path. You live to cultivate your inner strength, your peace, your purpose. And those who feel they're always lacking solutions, may not be the ones to entrust with your sacred energy, because life is not a place to sink endlessly into complaint. It's a place to act, to love, to create, to grow. 8. The toxic positivist, someone who denies reality, causing you to bypass your problems instead of addressing them. When you speak about your genuine concerns, perhaps your children are struggling in school, your health isn't what it used to be, or your income feels uncertain, they quickly pat your shoulder and say, "Oh, don't worry. Everything's going to be fine." Or, "You just have to stay positive." It sounds soothing at first, but over time, that response begins to blur your emotional clarity. What you really needed was space to face the truth, to process your emotions. But instead, you were nudged toward positive thinking even when your heart wasn't ready. Have you ever found yourself swallowing your sadness, simply to keep the mood light? Have you ever forced a smile when inside you were struggling deeply? If so, you've likely been caught in the presence of toxic positivity, a false optimism that pressures you to feel better before you're ready. The toxically optimistic person doesn't argue with you. They don't say, "You're being negative." Instead, they quietly assume that if you're not smiling, you must be doing something wrong. And so, your concerns go unacknowledged. Your emotions go unnamed. Everything is painted over with a single phrase: "It'll all be okay." But Stoic philosophy doesn't reject uncomfortable emotions. On the contrary, Marcus Aurelius taught, "Let your emotions pass through you, don't let them consume you." That means, if you feel sadness, anxiety, or fear, let it be present. Don't deny it. Don't judge it. But also, don't let it control your life. I remember a woman in her 60s sharing her experience. She was dealing with the pain of declining health and emotional distance from her grandchildren abroad. Each time she opened up, her optimistic friend would simply say, "Just stay positive. It'll get better." And she told me, "I didn't want someone to dry my tears. I just wanted the space to cry." Tears are not shameful. They are cleansing, but only if we're allowed to let them fall. It's not wrong to feel low, but when you are denied the chance to express that low, you begin to wear a mask, forced, smiling, and quietly alone. Epictetus once said, "It is not events that define us, but how we respond." But toxic optimism assumes there's only one acceptable response: joy. So if you can't think positive, you feel as though you've failed. You haven't. You've simply been held to someone else's emotional standard. Reflect for a moment. When was the last time you truly felt overwhelmed and wanted to speak openly, but held back, thinking, "I don't want to bring down the mood"? That is emotional suppression, and it wears on the soul. Sadness and worry are not mistakes. They're signals, meant to be felt, understood, and integrated. When you allow yourself to truly feel them, you gain clarity, stillness, and even gratitude. Even tears can become sacred when they're allowed to fall in peace. I recall a man in his 60s who endured years of quiet grief. Every time he tried to share, his family would cut him off with, "Come on, Dad. It's going to be fine." And so, he stopped talking. The next morning, he woke feeling hollow. He thought, "Does my pain even matter?" And in that silence, he stopped reaching out, and began sinking into isolation. Optimism, when used without care, becomes a shield, not to protect, but to hide. It's like putting on a heavy coat to seem strong, when inside, you're freezing and exhausted. Yes, life offers many beautiful things, but you are also allowed to have days when you are not okay. You are allowed to pause, to sit with your hurt, to breathe through it. And when you do, something shifts. You don't rise out of pain with fake joy, you rise with real strength. Someone once asked me, Shouldn't we use optimism to lift others up? My answer, yes, but only after you've listened to their pain. Instead of saying, "Don't worry," try saying, "I'm here with you." True peace is not forced positivity. It is quiet empathy. It's the presence that holds space without judgment. A Stoic doesn't lock their emotions behind walls of steel. They feel deeply. They reflect honestly. They don't chant cheer up, they whisper. Feel it fully, because when you feel fully, you will eventually shine from within. And perhaps that helps us better understand. Those who offer hollow optimism may not mean harm. Maybe they're simply afraid. Afraid of watching you fall, without knowing how to hold you steady. So they offer a bandage of cliches, when what you needed was presence. Have you ever experienced that? Have you ever needed someone to simply listen, but instead, they told you to move on? If so, take heart, your feelings were never wrong. This is your moment to pause, to give yourself permission to feel sad, scared, unsure. The real danger isn't sadness. The danger is being told you shouldn't feel it. So next time someone tells you, everything will be fine, you might gently reply, "Thank you for your hope. But right now, I just need to be heard." A simple sentence, enough to remind both of you that this conversation is not a stage for false strength, but a safe ground for honest humanity. There are still other types of people we'll explore, those who make us question our worth, dim our light, or hesitate on our path. But before we move forward, let's do something powerful. Let your emotions exist. Let them breathe, because that is how we keep walking, without collapsing. 9. The influence of the fallen. When someone quietly drags you away from your values. Have you ever met someone who made you feel like you were slowly changing, but not for the better? As if every step forward you tried to make, every positive decision, was quietly pulled backward, not by direct words, but by the way they lived, the way they shared their world. Like an invisible trap. This kind of person is what we might call fallen or addicted, not only to substances, but to destructive patterns, alcohol, gambling, chaos, or reckless living. When you choose growth, they might casually say things like, "Why not have a little fun instead?" Or "Don't be so serious. Life's too short to just work and save." These words may sound harmless at first, but if you're not mindful, you may begin to waver. Maybe one drink isn't so bad. Maybe I should let go a little. And in that moment of weakness, you start drifting away from your discipline, your focus, your sense of self. I want you to remember, there may have been a time in your life when you felt truly at peace. But just a few small compromises, testing the waters, joining a party you didn't really want, could have quietly led you into a space your soul wasn't ready for. Whether it was alcohol, unproductive company, or draining habits, they cost you time, energy, and the chance to do something meaningful. People like this aren't inherently bad. Often, they're simply trying to soothe their own pain, and unknowingly pull others into their orbit. They'll say, "Come on, just one drink. You'll feel better." Or "It's the weekend. Relax for once." And maybe you agree the first time. But gradually, you begin to lose clarity. Your inner compass dulled by temporary relief. According to Stoicism, freedom begins with the mastery of desire. The moment you let a single indulgence control you, you begin to surrender a piece of your autonomy. You allow a crack in your inner discipline, and that crack becomes a door. I once worked with a man in his 50s, a former branch director of a major company. After retirement, he struggled to adjust. He told himself he deserved a break and began having drinks with old friends, just a few at first. But soon he started staying up late, skipping morning routines, abandoning his fitness and reading habits. The good rituals that once grounded him disappeared. One day, he asked himself, "What am I really chasing?" But even that question had lost its clarity. That's when he realized, the friend who once helped him relax had slowly become the very reason he lost the rhythm of the life he'd built for 25 years. Have you ever found yourself slowly letting go, just to rest a little? It may not seem painful at first. But one day, in a moment of sober clarity, you realize you've lost something far more precious, your self-awareness, your values, your autonomy. People say downfall comes from the desire to forget. But Stoic wisdom teaches, don't forget, stay awake. Don't run. Don't hide. Temporary escapes only lead you away from yourself. And to come back home to who you are, you must face every part of you, the pain, the doubt, the fragility, and choose not to be defined by weakness. So when you notice someone around you pulling you into a less healthy path, what should you do? First, don't judge them. They may be dealing with wounds of their own. You don't need to abandon them, but you can protect yourself by maintaining boundaries that guard your inner values. Second, stay loyal to the habits that make you stronger. If morning runs used to nourish you, remind yourself, this is my gift to myself. If reading or learning helped you grow, don't let them go. A single night of indulgence can cost you far more than you imagine. Third, if the relationship is close, speak gently. Say, I know you want me to unwind, and I appreciate that. But my way of resting is different. Meditation, movement, reflection. That's what truly helps me. It's not rejection, it's clarity. You're simply choosing a different road. From my years working with people between 35 and 70, I've seen one of the greatest challenges is when someone knows who they are, but gets pulled away by someone else. The remedy is rarely a fortress of defense. It's one quiet truth: you must believe in who you are, and believe that you can walk steady, even when tempted. And you know what's beautiful? When you stay grounded. Those who once tried to sway you don't always respond with resentment. Sometimes, they wake up. They see you're not chasing illusions. And your stillness becomes a quiet light, no pressure, no preaching, just authenticity. So ask yourself now, is there someone in my life who makes me feel weaker, less in control? If the answer is yes, you're not alone. Many of us have been there. And many have walked out, step by steady step, with a clear mind, strong heart, and faith in their own path. 10. The gossipers, how whispered words can quietly erode your inner peace. Have you ever stepped into a group conversation, and after just a few minutes, you felt uneasy? Your mind felt heavier. Something inside you tightened. You hadn't even said much, yet you felt drained. As if pulled into a spiral of rumors and silent judgments. That's the quiet poison of gossip. It doesn't come with violence. It doesn't scream. But it shifts the energy. It clouds the room, and worst of all, it plants subtle doubt in your heart. Doubt not only toward others, but even toward those you once trusted. I remember a client in her 50s who once told me, I can't even enjoy a meal or small talk anymore. The conversation always turns to someone else's flaws, this coworker's divorce, that neighbor's habits, and after a while, I realized, no one even knows who they're tearing down anymore. They're just talking to feel powerful. She wasn't an anxious person by nature, but the atmosphere of constant judgment pushed her to choose sides, to always stay on guard, and it left her emotionally exhausted. Stoic philosophy reminds us to surround ourselves with builders, not destroyers. Gossip doesn't strike you directly, but it feeds you a kind of mental junk food laced with suspicion. Psychological studies have shown that after just 5 minutes of gossip or criticism, the listener can experience a spike in emotions similar to anger or anxiety. And yet, gossip spreads so easily, because it gives people the illusion of being in the know. I once attended a casual dinner with longtime friends. They began discussing someone we all knew. He never does anything right. Does he? The evening started light-hearted, even cheerful. But by the end, everyone was quiet. No one smiled. When we parted ways, someone muttered, "Why do I feel so tense after a simple chat?" Why? Because that conversation didn't nourish connection, it invited judgment. It didn't bring clarity, it seeded spiritual confusion. One question I often ask clients is, when we gossip about someone, what are we really building inside ourselves? The answer is simple: doubt. Doubt is like a fog. It's not always visible, but it blinds our path. Another client, this one in his 60s, once joined a family social group hoping to bond more with his relatives. But just a few coffee meetings later, he admitted, "I hate going now. I keep thinking, if they talk like this about others, what must they say about me?" He began to lose trust, not only in them but in himself, in his own ability to feel safe in connection. Gossip doesn't always create conflict. It creates suspicion. It gives you the illusion of insight, but offers no direction. That's why it drains you. It doesn't lead anywhere meaningful. From a Stoic lens, unity is built on trust. If those around you are careless with words, if they don't honor boundaries or secrets, your serenity will constantly be at risk, no matter how deeply you've studied philosophy. So how do we respond when faced with a chronic gossiper? First, don't attack them harshly. Everyone has, at some point, said something they shouldn't. But you can gently shift the tone with a phrase like, "I don't know the full story. Maybe we can focus on something more positive." That one sentence can reroute a conversation, because dialogue is emotional energy in motion. If one person anchors it, others often follow. Second, manage your boundaries wisely. You don't need to cut people out, but you can reduce your involvement when the atmosphere begins to weigh you down. That's not being cold, it's being clear. You're preserving your energy, your clarity, your presence. Third, offer an alternative path. You might say, instead of talking about them, why don't we share something good that happened this week? Maybe it won't work the first time, but small pivots plant seeds. And sometimes, one small change becomes the beginning of a new culture. I recall leading a large group session. At the start, I simply asked, "Can anyone share one good thing that happened today?" The room went quiet. Then, slowly, people shared a warm cup of coffee, a peaceful yoga session, a child's laughter. The entire tone shifted. Gossip gave way to gratitude. And I realized, even a gentle light can pierce through the fog of suspicion. So ask yourself honestly, do the conversations I listen to make me feel heavier or lighter? That question can be your compass, because how you feel matters. Your emotions aren't noise, they're inner signals. And most importantly, you're not alone. Many of us, especially as we grow older, begin to feel tired of the whispering. But when we choose to stay kind, and strong, and grounded in truth, we help shape something better, a new emotional network where sincerity is valued more than gossip. That's not just Stoicism, it's wisdom in action. 11. The hot-tempered one, how overreactions can turn peace into pressure. Have you ever witnessed a moment when, instead of quiet sadness or a single tear, someone responded with shouting, loud, forceful, as if the entire room must fall silent beneath the shadow of their anger? This is the presence of someone with a quick temper. It's not just emotional reaction, It's like a small storm that passes through and shakes the atmosphere for everyone nearby. And if you've ever felt the air around you stiffen, your breathing grow heavier, all because one person grew angry, then you've felt the gravity of their influence. Hot-tempered people don't need to wage war. They only need to react. Sharply spoken words, piercing eyes that seem to dare you to speak, and suddenly, the space is no longer safe. What was once a casual conversation becomes a tightrope walk. You find yourself monitoring every word, every tone, just to avoid setting off another explosion. Ask yourself this: have you ever frozen mid-sentence, afraid a single word might spark a storm? If the answer is yes, you are not alone. Many people, especially those between the ages of 35 and 70, people who carry responsibility, who value harmony, have chosen silence not out of peace, but to absorb another's anger. Stoic philosophy reminds us, you can only control yourself. But what few say out loud is this: you must also resist, wisely. Because when you stay silent too long, when your truth is suffocated by someone else's fury, you are no longer yourself. You become a careful reflection, edited and subdued, just to avoid triggering them. I remember a woman in her 60s who told me about her husband. He would shout whenever work overwhelmed him. Every time, she would shrink inward, trying to be the calm tree shielding their children. But in reality, she was losing herself, her freedom, her right to feel. One day, she said to me, "I just want to breathe in rhythm with my own heart. But I keep holding my breath, afraid it might upset him." Overreaction doesn't just raise tension, it drags everyone down into a low, heavy emotional state. Anxiety, pressure, even depression. Have you ever felt your chest tighten just from a phone call? Have you noticed your heart race during a simple conversation? The moment the other person begins to raise their voice, that's when it's time to pause and recognize, this tension isn't mine, but I have the right to protect my peace. Here's how you can do that, in the spirit of Stoicism. 1. Take a deep breath, create mental distance. When they erupt, don't respond right away. Pause. Breathe. Bring your mind to something calm. This is how you avoid being pulled into their reaction. 2. Speak calmly and clearly. No need to shout back. Say something slowly, like, "Can we please talk in a calmer way?" Choosing stillness in the storm is your quiet form of power. 3. Set boundaries. If they frequently lash out, you can say, "If we can't keep this respectful, I'd prefer we pause and continue later." Stoicism doesn't ask you to walk away immediately, but it allows you to walk away when respect is lost. 4. Be the one who brings peace into the space. You can't change someone's temper, but you can anchor yourself in stillness. When both of you are calm, offer this: "Can we both take 5 seconds in silence before continuing?" That gentle pause may be more powerful than any argument. There is great strength in not matching their anger, and still choosing to stay. With patience, you're not silencing them. You're simply protecting the serenity of your mind. You're giving both of you a chance to remember, what was the purpose of this conversation in the first place? True mastery, as the Stoics knew, lies not in control of others, but in guarding the flame of inner peace, even in the face of fire. 12. The one who plays the victim, how blame becomes a shield against responsibility. Do you remember the times you stayed silent just to keep the peace? You might have suppressed your feelings to preserve a relationship. But here's a deeper truth: preserving peace doesn't always mean staying quiet. Sometimes, keeping the peace means speaking up, with calmness and clear boundaries. Have you ever felt like you're living in a play where one person always plays the lead role? As the victim, this person doesn't just complain, they never take responsibility. They constantly feel wronged, by people, by circumstances, and they expect everyone to acknowledge their suffering. They don't just feel hurt, they believe everything bad is someone else's fault, and that they are powerless to change any of it. And when that belief settles deep, they stop growing. They stop evolving. They become stuck, not because life broke them, but because they stopped reaching for their own agency. You may have heard someone say, "That's just how life is. Life never goes my way." In that moment, they're not just expressing sadness. They're rejecting responsibility. They're choosing to surrender, when they could be choosing to respond. In Stoic philosophy, this mindset stands in stark contrast to how we are called to live. Marcus Aurelius said, "Life does not concern itself with who you are. It follows its own laws." And the core lesson is this: it's not your circumstances that define you, it's how you respond to them. I remember working with a man in his 50s from the East Coast. He had gone through a business failure and would often say, "It was the market, the customers, the people, it wasn't fair." Not once did he mention his own decisions, lessons, or efforts to try again. He had become trapped in a victim identity, and that mindset slowly drained him of all motivation. Now you might ask, but wasn't he really hurt? Doesn't he have a right to feel that way? Yes, he does. But there's a difference between feeling pain and living in it. He used the pain as armor, to shield himself from facing his own ability to rise. And the longer he wore that armor, the heavier it became. Have you seen someone like this? A friend, a colleague, or even yourself, wearing pain like a badge to earn sympathy, rather than transforming it into strength? In my years of working with people aged 40 to 70, I've learned this: the victim mindset often grows out of long periods of neglect, rejection, or failure. They've been hurt, they've been overlooked, they've been told they don't matter, and instead of rising through the pain, they stop. They cling to their suffering as proof of their worth, because they fear they have nothing else to show. But in the Stoic view, we know this truth: you can be hurt, you can be broken, and still, you can choose how you rise. No one forbids you from grieving, but no one can stop you from rebuilding either. Pain can become your soil, and like a skilled gardener, you can plant something new in it. In one group I mentored through Stoic journaling, people asked themselves each day, what am I responsible for today? What have I done to become better than yesterday? Slowly, their language changed. From "this happened to me" to "I made this happen." From "I suffered" to "I grew." And when you start doing, you stop blaming. You become an agent of your life, not a victim of it. So ask yourself honestly, do you want to keep being the victim, or do you want to reclaim your power? And if you're in a relationship where the other person never takes ownership, where everything is always someone else's fault, you may need to create space, not to abandon them, but to protect your own clarity. You can say gently, I know you've been through something difficult, but I believe you can. Choose you can instead of you deserve. Empower them. Don't just comfort them. You can even share your story. I once felt exactly like you, but I started again. One small thing at a time. You're planting a seed of strength, of possibility, because victimhood doesn't just rob the person of responsibility, it weakens the spirit of everyone nearby. If a whole group adopts this mindset, the air becomes thick with complaint, hesitation, fear. The Stoics say, choose your friends as you would choose your teachers. And sometimes, the loudest teacher is the victim, but they teach you how to complain, not how to rise. So you must choose. You might need to limit your time with them. You might need to stop proving I'm not broken and start proving I can build. Each small step you take moves you away from being a victim, and closer to being the agent of your life. And here's the truth, you're not alone. There are others walking this path, stoic minds. Strong hearts. They've been hurt, they've been shaken, but they chose to get up, and they're still walking. 13. The self-centered person, when relationships become a tool, not a bond. Have you ever trusted someone deeply, believed in the connection, and then slowly realized you were just a temporary stop? A means to an end? Self-centered people rarely shout or confront. They don't hurt you loudly. They do it quietly, with silence, with calculated presence, and with well-timed favors. They maintain the relationship only as long as it benefits them, your time, your money, your network, your reputation. And all the while, you may think you're in a mutual connection. Until one day, your heart feels hollow, drained, and you can't explain why. I once worked with a woman in her mid-50s, gentle, generous, always showing up for others. When friends were hurting, she listened. When relatives needed help, she gave. When colleagues stumbled, she held space. But when she fell ill, in silence and fatigue, no one came. She called. No answer. She texted. No reply. And for the first time, she whispered to herself, "Am I just a rest stop, a place people pull into when they need comfort, then leave without a glance once they're restored?" That's what it feels like to be in a relationship with someone who only thinks of themselves. They don't break you, they just quietly empty you. And perhaps the most painful truth, those who give, who care, who understand emotion deeply, are often the easiest targets. We hold umbrellas for others in their storm, but they borrow our umbrella and leave the moment the sun comes out. We're left behind, drenched, cold, and unnoticed. Stoicism doesn't name this through emotion. It names it through observation and choice. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Do not allow yourself to be used as a tool by those unwilling to walk beside you." A Stoic does not resent the selfish. They simply refuse to be entangled. They step back, just enough to see clearly, just enough to remain unharmed. Have you ever found yourself in the driver's seat of emotion, but someone else was steering the wheel? You give. You try. You show up. And when you need something, a word, a moment, a gesture, they are too busy, unavailable, or not in the right headspace. That's when you realize, you are not part of their heart. You are a convenience, a service station on their road. And when that happens enough, you begin to question, am I loving the wrong people? Self-centered individuals are often masters of charm. They know what to say to make you feel seen. They let you shine, strategically, but never because they care. It's simply how they keep you close, within their orbit, ready for use. You cannot change them. And Stoicism doesn't ask you to. What it asks is that you pause, step back, and ask, am I walking alongside someone? Or am I carrying them? The weight of a selfish relationship is not in what they demand. It's in what you keep giving, unconsciously, endlessly, while receiving only fatigue in return. We are taught that selflessness is noble, and it is. But selflessness does not mean self-erasure. Epictetus reminds us, you are responsible first for your own soul, before saving the world. You cannot lift others when you are sinking. I'm not saying walk away from everyone, but if someone only reaches out when they need something, never asks how you're feeling, never listens with presence, then it may be time to redraw your boundaries. Maybe you don't respond right away. Maybe you say, I'm focusing on myself right now. And you'll see, if they were only there for convenience, they'll drift, because you're no longer the easy stop. And here's what's beautiful, when you start loving yourself deeply, you attract people who love truthfully, not for gain, not for favors, but for shared presence, mutual respect, and silent understanding. Those relationships don't demand, they don't exhaust, they nourish. So when you sense that someone lives only for themselves, disregards your feelings, your time, your voice, you may not need to confront them. You may simply need to step back, in silence. Let your absence speak. Let your path take you to where warmth still exists. And remember, you are not selfish for setting limits. You are simply living in integrity with your soul. 14. The lazy and stagnant, when a lack of drive silently holds you back. There are people you meet in life, just once, and you immediately sense a spark in their eyes, a quiet fire, a soul that moves forward. And then, there are others you may meet 100 times. Yet it always feels like they're standing still in a world that keeps turning. They're not bad. They're not cruel. They're simply missing something, a sense of drive. Laziness and stagnation don't always look like someone lying on a couch, refusing to work. Some people still show up to work, still smile, still make small talk, but inside, there's a flatness, a quiet void. No hunger, no goal, no motion. They let time pass like a river with no banks, and if you're not careful, they'll carry you with them downstream. I once spoke with a kind man in his 60s. He was gentle, respectful, never a burden to anyone. But year after year, nothing changed. He never tried something new, never took a single step forward. Whenever I gently asked, why not write a memoir? Or try painting? He would smile and say, maybe later. I'm still thinking. 10 years passed. He was still thinking. Have you ever sat beside someone like that? At first, you feel compassion, then fatigue, then, little by little, you begin to slow down too. You find yourself more forgiving of delays, more tolerant of excuses. The air around them grows heavy, not because they've done anything wrong, but because they've done nothing at all. Stoicism does not equate constant action with virtue, but it does value conscious choice. We are called to live intentionally, to choose what is right, and to walk that path with integrity. A stagnant person isn't evil, but if you walk with them too long, you may forget how to walk at all. You begin to wait, instead of act. You grow comfortable with pause, and one day, you no longer recognize the version of yourself you once aspired to be. Stagnation is dangerous because it's gentle. It doesn't shock. It doesn't burn. It's more like dust, soft, silent, settling over days, weeks, years. And by the time you notice, it's winter in your life, quiet, cold, and hard to escape. A student once confided, I've lived with my best friend since college. He was once full of passion, but now he just delays, hesitates, never follows through. I stayed to support him, but now, I'm the one who's tired. I've missed chances. I've put my life on hold waiting for him. He asked me, am I being selfish if I step away? And I told him, no, that's not selfish. That's responsibility to your own life. You are not abandoning someone by choosing to move forward. You are not unkind for stepping out of stagnation to reclaim your light. Because Stoicism teaches us, stand firm like rock, but don't let yourself drown in stagnant waters. If someone has lost their dreams, if they no longer strive, no longer dare, understand them, but don't imprison yourself there. Each person walks their own path, but you deserve a life of purpose, of wakefulness, of motion. No one asks you to always climb, but if you stand forever at the base of the hill just to keep someone company, you are spending your most precious resource, today. And when you look back at the people you've met, those who envied, manipulated, gossiped, blamed, played the victim, or dulled your spirit, you won't hold hatred, only clarity. Each of them was a reminder, that you must stay awake, that you must choose what is worthy of your time, mind, and dignity. Stoic wisdom doesn't ask you to cut people off in anger. It teaches you to let go. With wisdom, we do not react, we reflect. We do not flee, we decide. And most of all, we keep growing. Every person, every chapter, whether beautiful or painful, is shaping you into someone stronger, deeper, more grounded. If something in these words feels familiar to you, if you see part of yourself, or part of the future you want to avoid, then take heart, you are already on the right path. And if you want to keep walking that path, if you want to explore the wisdom and clarity that Stoic philosophy offers, I would be honored to walk with you. Subscribe to this channel if you feel this space can nourish your soul and anchor your mind. One step, one breath at a time, for a community of reason, kindness, and quiet freedom. Thank you for listening, with your whole heart.